Okay. First off, where were you born?
Where was I born? I was born down there at the home place where John lives, there in the dining room of the house there. And I just missed being a groundhog by 2 hours. I was born February 3rd, 1927. And growed up down there. And, a lot of the stuff around there, like the old barn there, it's burnt down now, but it had a lot of memories, different things that we played and pulled, and had a lot of fun there. And had a good home. Mom and Daddy always had plenty to eat, a lot of love, and that's important. Always have a lot of love. We didn't have a whole lot of money, but we had a lot of love.
You were born in the kitchen?
No, in the dining room. We used to have in the house was the bedroom and the kitchen and the dining room and the living room and the upstairs. And after we got so big, all us boys slept upstairs. We fell down them stairs many a time. Had a back porch. Outside the home place had a building there where the utility rooms is on back of the utility room where it sits now. We called it the duck house. Used to raise ducks and geese. And you'd pick their feathers and make pillows and feather beds out of it. And all we had back then was feather beds that Mom and Dad had made and squaw ticks. You just take wheat squaw and stuff it in a tick, and boy, you'd nestle down in that in the wintertime and really keep warm. And of course, didn't have no insulation in the house. And that was unheard of back then. And a lot of times you'd go to bed with the old flat iron Mom had heated on the wood stove, and you wrap it in a big towel and put it on your feet, keep your feet warm. And we, all us boys, we slept 3 or 4 in the bed, and that way you keep warm.
What type of or how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 4 brothers. Didn't have no sisters. Alan was the oldest, and Bob was the second, and I was third. I was the middle one. So Alan and Bob helped Dad, and I'd get to help Mother. I learned to cook and bake and all that stuff. And then John and Kenny come along. John come along when I was 9, and I was 12 when Kenny was born. So Dad always said that someone asked him one time, said, how come you scattered your kids out all the time? He said, well, that way so I could have help a long time. And so there's a lot of difference between Alan, my oldest brother, and Kenneth, my youngest one. And I was the middle one. I was the best in the bunch, you know. You know, don't toot your own horn, nobody toot it for you.
What type of trouble did you and your brothers get into?
Oh, lots of things. And, done a lot of fighting. We'd do a lot of different things. Played a lot with horses and had a lot of fights. I remember one time I wasn't very big. Alan and Bob got into it. Of course, Alan was 6 years older than Bob, and Bob was 4 years older than I, so they got into a big one. We was out cutting up kindling and stacking wood. And they they got into it and got to fighting, and I tried to help Bob, and Alan, he got the best of both of us, and so Bob, he picked up a double-bitted axe and took after Alan. And about that time, Mother come out the back door and heard all the commotion. I got to hollering, and Mama come out of the back porch and down on the ground, started out there, and she seen Bob after Alan with the axe, and she fainted. And so that stopped the fight. And the time we got Mama revived, the fight was over. And that was one of the, I guess, the worst situation we ever got into. Of course, always had a lot of fighting. And one time after Alan, Alan, he went to CC camp. That was in Roosevelt's time. He started the CC camps, but the boys, kind of like the Army, but there was CC camp at that time, and they went around, and a lot of the state parks that we have was built by them boys in the CC camp. And then the Second War started in '41, and Alan went to service, and then Bob graduated in '41, and he went to service, and I didn't graduate until '44. And then I was just 17 when I graduated. Someone asked me, well, how come? And I said, well, it's all according to how smart you are, you know. And that wasn't the cause, because I started the school when I was 5. And we went to grade school, all of us did, over here at West Seminary, where Bill Pierce lives over there. And then the war was pretty heavy, and they was running out of food, so I got a 6 months deferment to help Dad farm in the rest of 45, and I went into service in 46, in January of 46. Of course, we by that time, well, the war was over in 45, all but the occupation. And I went in January of 46 and went to Fort Sharon up at Chicago. And they shipped me to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and I took 9 weeks of basic and had a 7-day leave, and then went back to New York, and they shipped me to Europe on the big transport boat, the George Washington. And we landed at Le Havre, France over there, and went across to France and stayed there at Le Havre for a few days, and went across France in the regular boxcar on the railroad. They just loaded us up like a bunch of cattle, and we went across to France into Germany, and then we was stationed in Wörthersburg, Austria for a while, and then we was at Linz, Austria, and we spent most of our time there guard duty and taking displaced persons back. The old folks and older people and kids that got separated from their families. You know, during the war, you see that they're now they're in Kuwait, where this family and kids and all just to walk and try to keep themselves from getting killed, you know. And a lot of them, they'd found out where they was, and then they was in a concentration deal like they had there, and we found out where they was supposed to be from, or kin to someone, and we load them up on the box cars and take them back to Czechoslovakia and Poland and those countries there where they had come from. And you just fall in love with them kids, you know. Little kids didn't know where they had any, didn't have no parents, didn't have anybody, you know. And a lot of them I'd like to buy home, you know, and because they just fell in love with them, and that was quite an experience. And we done a lot of guard duty over there, and it was quite a deal for us to have the privilege of doing those kind of things. And I was at Volkerburg, Austria, when I got, well, we'd been on a trip to take folks back, and we run out of, we were supposed to pick up our rations at a certain place, and we missed connection there, and we didn't have any food for about 3 days and 3 nights, and we got to robbing some of the gardens along when they'd stop taking the old boxcar freight train back, and we'd pick up apples and things out of the garden, you know, and I think that's where I contacted the polio, because it wasn't the best sanitation as, you know, I mean, we like a bunch of bums, you know, and we messed up to pick up our rations, what the problem was, and the people we was taking back didn't have anything. So we, whenever we'd stop for a different town as we went back, well, we'd pick up stuff out of the garden and feed them kids and older people. And then after I got back and I was sent out on guard duty we had the privilege of guarding Hitler's missile factory he had built all underground. You just look at it, you think it was farm country, and there was about I'll put it 3 blocks square under the ground, and this is where they had building those missiles, and they just about had them perfected. If he'd been another 6 months ahead of time, it would have been a different story, probably about the end of the war, because you just drive up to it and you think, well, it's an old farm out here, and there was underneath a big cliff, a lot of trees on top of it, where they had a entrance in there. It's just like going in town. It was amazing to see it. And we worked guard there. Well, that's where I got sick at, was there. And I went to the hospital there in Linz, Austria, and 2 of the other boys in the vicinity had contacted polio, but they didn't make it. And I didn't think, you know, I knew I was sick in the dickens. I didn't know, had no idea what was the matter. And I was out of my head for a while, which I've always been that way, but it was put in, I was put in there, and they had to take a spinal tap to find out for sure what was wrong. And after I got better, well, I knew my leg felt different, and I felt different, but I thought, well, yeah, it'll be all right. They told me not to try to get out of bed after I got to feeling better. Well, and I'd begin to get tired of that bedpan, so I tried to get out of bed and go to the restroom. And I got out on the side of the bed and put my weight down, and I just fell on the floor because I couldn't put no weight on this left side then. And because the muscles had all going up, and so I laid there and tried to get up, and I couldn't, and the nurse, she finally come in there, and she said, "What the world are you doing?" She just gave me a tongue lashing, you know. I said, "Honey, help me up, get me back in bed." And so she had to go get some help and they said, "Well, now, boy, we told you not to get out of bed." Said, "You've got a long way to go, and before you can get up and run around again." And so from there, why, we took some therapy, and then they shipped me up to Munich, Germany. All that was left of Munich, Germany at that time was the churches and the hospital. Everything else was just flattened, and just big holes everywhere where the bombs had hit, you know, and tore it up. And but you know, they didn't try to hit the churches or the hospitals. I mean, that was but a lot of them got hit, but they wasn't supposed to, you know. because they didn't have the accuracy they got now. You know, they hadn't unbombed. But anyway, I was there for about 3 weeks, 20 a month, and they shipped me on a up to it left me now, up the northern part of Germany, and I came back on a hospital boat back to the United States. And it took 9 days to go over under George Washington, and it went over in April. April the 9th we sailed, went over there. But coming back, it took us 14 days, and we come back in February, and it was it was a heck of a storm. And I didn't get sick going over. It was nice, but boy, I got sick coming back. And if you ever been seasick, ain't nothing any worse. And you vomit and think, well, you're going to vomit everything up you got inside. And man, it was bad. But then we landed back, and boy, that Statue of Liberty is the prettiest thing you've ever seen. Boy, pretty. I never been to Washington, D.C. Been by there when we was going, and you could look off in the distance and see the Capitol. And it's the same way when we landed and come back, and they shipped me to Battle Creek, Michigan. And you could see it. We was as far away as Jim is down there, and the Capitol, but far as ever, being there in front of it and really getting to see it, you know. They shipped me to Battle Creek, Michigan at Percy Jones General Hospital, and I was there, took therapy and learned to swim, and it really strengthened my leg, and I walked with couldn't walk for a long time, and I walked with crutches, and I walked with a cane until, well, I was supposed to, even after I was discharged in October the 17th, 1947. And from that time on, and then, of course, I couldn't, of course, all the cars in Dad's car was, you had to use a clutch, you know. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't use the clutch. I couldn't put that much pressure on my left foot. I got out there once in a while and tried to drive and use my right foot to clutch it, you know. And I really got, you might say, depressed, and got feeling sorry for myself, you know. And Dad said to me, he said, well, I'll take you into town and see the guys and things. And he said, take the car. He said, you can drive that with your right foot if you just be careful. And so it was about Christmas time, man. I finally decided to go uptown and visit with the people I knew and stuff. And then the good part happened in February, when I met my sweetheart.
Let's backtrack before we get there.
Okay.
Let's go back to growing up and going to school. What was school like for you?
Well, if I'd have paid some attention, I'd have been better off. We had went to school the 8th grade, graduated over here, like I said a while ago, at West Seminary. And went to high school. My freshman year was 40 and 41. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention, just to be truthful with you. As Mrs. Duff was our history teacher. I took ancient history, which if I knew the Lord was going to call me to preach, well, I'd have paid more attention, because it was about the ancient history of Israel and all that, you know. And but I didn't pay a whole lot of attention. I just horsed around, really. And I took agriculture all 4 years, and in the FFA and all that, which was I was interested in that but the other stuff, and I played basketball. Went out for football a couple of years, but I had time. The first freshman year I didn't get to go out because Bob was a senior, and he drove a car, and I had to ride back and forth. But then my sophomore year and my junior year, I rode the horse to high school. We had a barn there where the bus barn is, where we kept the horses. There was there's about a dozen of us kids that rode the horses, and then I went out for football. Bert Dancy was the coach, but at the time I practiced football and then come home, ride the horse home and milk the cows and do the chores. It was quite a burden, so I quit playing football. And then I went out for basketball a little bit, and it was the same thing. I couldn't keep up. I have to do all those things, and so I didn't get to. I always told Amy and Frankie and all of them that played basketball that never was as good as me, but that was one of them tall stories, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then my senior year, my Grandpa McLaughlin had a 35 Chevy car, and he had got to the place where he couldn't drive anymore. And so I bought his 35 Chevy, and I had it to drive back and forth my senior year, and I gave him $200 for it. And
was that your first vehicle?
Yeah, 35 Chevy. Boy, it was a dandy. And then not very many kids had a car. And of course, I got to being a good boy, you know, and hauling the girls back and forth to town, and so that kind of took up some of the slack of not getting to play ball, you know.
Mm.
And then when I graduated, see, I was just 17 when I graduated, and the next year I wasn't 18. I didn't have to register until the next year, and so when school started, I told Dad, I said, I think I'll go back to high school, and he said, well, you can't, said you done graduated. I said, well, I'd like to go up and visit with him.
Did you get in any trouble in high school or school?
Well, we won't talk about that.
Well, why not? You mean one good time you got in trouble?
Oh my. Well, like I said a while ago about Mrs. Duff, she taught ancient history, and which you're supposed to take as a freshman, and then she taught American history, which you're supposed to take as a senior. And she didn't allow no chewing gum or no whispering or no nothing. You had to toe the mark. And I'd get caught every once in a while whispering or chewing gum. And if she caught you chewing gum, she'd make you stand up in front of the class and chew that gum, and not snicker or nothing, you know. And she had a pointer that she used to point out on the blackboard and the maps and things. And she'd pop you with that pointer. And one day I acted up, I needed it, and I got it. And she popped me with that pointer, and I always didn't care a whole lot, but I didn't like to be called Donald. And she popped me that day with that pointer and said, Donald, said, you know, said, you keep on the way you are, and swung that pointer down the way you are. She said, you'll never amount to nothing. And you know, by doggy, she was right. She was a good teacher, though. You had to toe the mark. In the, of course, everybody in the off period, went into assembly and supposed to study, and of course we'd get acting up in there, and there'd just be one teacher that set up in front, you know, was the overseer of that period, and some of the boys would get foreign stuff, you know, down the aisle, you know, and different things like that. And some of them would hold up their hand and want to go to the restroom, and when they'd go, well, they'd stomp on the floor, you know, and make all kinds of noise. And then when they come back, well, Mrs. Duff, whenever she'd be standing there where they come in at, and she'd pop them. I mean, the teachers, I guess, can't even correct them anymore, but boy, she'd correct you. And she'd get you act up and get caught with chewing gum. She'd make you stand up and chew, and once in a while she'd make you put your nose in the circle on the blackboard, and with your back to the stand sideways with your nose in that and chew that gum, so that everybody else and the rest of the kids just snicker and carry on, you know. You probably get choked. She was a good teacher, though, but she had her way with her pointer. She'd pop you.
So did you put your nose on the chalkboard before?
Oh yeah, several times. Yeah, she yeah, I had a good ag teacher. Oh, he'd get out and play ball with us, and play basketball with us, and everything. He'd took us, me and Tony Winky and Dickie's boys, took us to the state fair and stayed 3 days. And he'd take us on camping trips. In the summertime, if we could get ahead of our work, took us over on the river over at North Clay City and camped for a week. And he'd get up every morning and go down the river and dip him a coffee pot full of water out of the river and bring it back and begin to boil it and put his coffee in it. He'd say, "Oh, that's good." Couldn't very well do that now. That was in 41, 42. It didn't have the chemicals like we got now. I enjoyed high school, but I didn't think I needed to know all that. I knew how to plow, I knew how to plant corn, but boy, I wished I'd have paid attention.
And that's what you did on the farm? That's what your parents did, farmers?
Yeah.
How about your grandparents?
Yeah, they was both farmers.
Is that how you got your parents got the property there, or?
No, my Grandpa Lusk and Grandma, they had had a large family. There was 11 kids. There was Dad had 2 brothers, and he had 8 sisters. And they first come from Kentucky up here, and they lived there where the Brooks place is up here, where the big barn is on the coming out of town on the left side, that white barn. There was a big 2-story house there, and they lived there until Grandpa bought the farm down there, 120 acres on the right-hand side where Grandma and him lived and where Dad grew up at. Dad went to school in town, I think, for the first 4 or 5 years, and then when they moved out here, he went to West Seminary. And that's how. And my Grandma McLaughlin lived over there where Greenwoods lived, and that used to be a big 2-story house there. And Mom was born there and grew up there. Now, when she went to high school, but she never graduated. She went a couple of years, and she drove a buggy in. And that picture got upstairs there is Granddad and a horse, and Mom and Dad is in it. And the horse that she drove to high school with the buggy, Grandpa was showing him off in that picture upstairs. I don't know whether I ever showed that to you or not. It's a big picture.
I'm going to stop you right there. The tapes are ready to run out, and then I'm going to put on new tape for us.